What is going on, my game design gurus, and welcome to the Level Design Lobby. Everyone, I hope you're well and enjoying yourself playing and or making the games that you love. Today is the 22nd episode of the Level Design Lobby, where we have a special guest. Drum roll. That's a pretty bad drum roll. Francesco. How are you doing, man?
Fine, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and
You can't see it right now, but he's clearly lying to me. I can see it in his eyes.
I'm honored to be here. I swear on my life.
No, man, it's good to have you here. Francesco is a friend of mine. We work together. We have a good time and a good laugh. And he is a technical artist. And we're going to be chatting a bit about him and sort of his experience, as well as some cool stuff that you're working on as well. So, firstly, Francesco, tell the people about yourself, mate.
Well, there isn't really much to say about
Humble
me.
beginnings, blessed by gods as I was born, dropped by the doves.
Sort of, along that lines. Jokes aside, I've been working game development now for 7-8 years, something like that.
Damn.
Just kicked out of the university. I was like, get a job, loser. And so did I.
I'm glad there was someone who said that at your graduation.
Best gift someone can give to you is to say that. And I worked on several places, a lot of indie studios. I started off as an intern in Sony, so
cool.
Right off the bat trying AAA stuff. I didn't really enjoy that experience much because it was a lot of testing going on. Like
Right.
the studio was a test itself.
Oh, okay.
And then I worked on several indie projects, last of which is The Last Day of June,
Yeah.
which...
It's now on if you haven't heard of it, if you have a PlayStation, it's now one of their bundles, I believe, for the free game of the month. If it's not this month, it'll be the month just gone, and it's now on a few... It's because it's been nominated for a few awards in Italy as well, if I'm correct.
Yes, and also candidate nominated for BAFTA, so...
Oh, even better then, so...
hopefully
that's
we
not
win.
an insult on Italian awards when I say that. It's a British Academy Award, so it's only better. No, I'm messing.
But aside from that, it's also now on Switch available.
Is it coming to Switch?
Yes, of
Oh,
course.
cool. Well, I'll be picking that up.
So maybe worth checking it out there.
He's been saying that to me for a while. Yeah, Francesco, I'll get it, Francesco.
In all the glorious 720p.
All right, PC Master Race. All right.
And now I'm working with this nice fellow at CDP.
Yep. So no, we've been hanging out a bit, and so I guess my question for you, one of the first ones for our listeners, is how was it going? I guess did you find it hard? Because I know some people who've gone indie and then tried to get into AAA, and sometimes they found it a bit more of a struggle to get into AAA. Did you find that transition hard, or was it not even an issue?
Well, I must say that the first impact was a bit more of an impersonal workspace. Like there was like less a spirit of camaraderie between the teammates, but that's obvious because it's a massive team compared to the indie studios. And I kind of miss probably the wider array of responsibilities that you get in a smaller team. But again, that comes with the team side. Aside from that, it's not a terrible transition. I think it's pretty right.
Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, I know most people found it easy, but I think it's worth asking a question for people because I think as much as we all make it, he's allergic to my potatoes.
Oh God, yes, I'm good.
What was I saying? Yeah, at the end of the day, we're all making video games, but I think because when I started on mobile, so I had a lot more. I'm trying to think of the word. I guess a lot more responsibilities, a lot of different hats compared to AAA. I guess one of the other questions then is, can you explain to the audience what is tech art? Because most people know about environment or concept art, but what define tech art for the listeners?
Well, for the people that had the luck to see Avatar: The Last Airbender, I am the bridge between the two words, the coders and the art.
He's even got the blue arrow tattoo glowing right now.
Yes, indeed. But on a more serious tone, it's mostly an artist or a programmer that has explored the other field. So I started as an artist and I learned programming, shader, all more technical stuff, like all the stuff that is actually under the hood. So I do not only work on things that look nice, but I also make them work. I think this is the simplest way I can pass my job.
Nice. And I guess if you had to give any advice to anyone who is trying to get into tech art, what would, I guess, like your 3 biggest tips be to someone?
The first tip is to be clear about how much you want to be an artist and how much you want to be a coder, because there are different expectations from this job.
Okay.
There are like programmers that barely touch some 3D stuff, to artists that can write some shaders and do implementation, but they mostly work on art, and more stuff in between. There's a lot of scales of gray, and a lot of chaos about the very definition of what you should be able to do. So sell yourself. Don't be afraid of selling yourself as a 70%, 30% artist coder, or other way around, or 50-50. Don't be afraid of doing that, but be upfront. This is my first tip. The second thing would be find, even if you master the field of coding and the field of art, pick what you like the most.
Yeah.
There are so many things that we cover as tech artists that it's impossible to master everything. So love one and learn the rest. But be passionate about at least one field for the art and one field for the code, and you'll have no problem whatsoever. The third one, always be curious, because this tech artist not only liking art for the sake of it, but also understanding how the art works.
Yeah.
So a good mindset is when you play a game, always trying to figure out how it was made, even on a technical standpoint. So like, I could replicate this in this way. Try to think out this way, and it's more interesting because it's a challenge then.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I guess I get a follow-up question for that one is, because if you're applying for an environment artist job, you technically just show off your scenes that you've made or props. I guess if you're applying as a technical artist, if you were looking at someone's portfolio, what would you recommend for them to put on? What is that you should demonstrate to show as a tech artist?
This is a bit more of a shot in the dark, because it depends on what the company is asking of you. But as a rule of thumb, a good portfolio. I'm not saying outstanding as a legit, full-fledged artist, but a good portfolio always helps. Probably some technical demos, so some shader tests, or even optimization stuff. It's really nice to see tech artists keen on optimization. Even some tools, some nice tool you made, for Unity on Unreal, standard engines. They are a good portfolio because you can demonstrate that you can iterate over someone else's work. So this is the kind of stuff they usually look for a portfolio.
No, that's cool. And for anyone who is listening and wondering about tech art, I think that helps them greatly. So thank you for answering those questions, good sir.
Cheers.
And now that we've got the kind of the formalities and the educational thing out of the way, we're actually here to talk about something else that Francesco is working on, which is really exciting, other than trying to be my friend, which is another exciting task that he is enduring right now.
An adventure.
So many dragons. You won't even think it. You are currently in a team of, if I'm correct on this, 6 of you? It's 5 or 6 of you.
Roughly, fluctuating, but there.
Yeah, that are currently, and some of you may have already seen this online because you've got a bit of an online presence already with this, it's the Soul Revenant. I don't know why I struggle on that word, sorry. You speak better English than me and it's your second language. It's embarrassing for me. Soul Revenant, remake. I guess the unofficial remake here.
Yes, it's a pretty cool project. Yeah. I must say one thing. First thing, I thank everybody that is a fan of Soul Reaver and is already.
Is it Reaver? Did I say Revenant?
Soul Reaver is the original.
Sorry.
Any Legacy of Kain fan, I would thank them because it's a fairly small community at the moment, because the series is ancient, but they are well dedicated, and they're showing like an immense amount of support. Like they are nothing short of like Aztec worshippers. Like they're that close to. Yes, it's an interesting project, and everybody on the team is super excited about trying to revive this forgotten gem. Let's call it like that.
Sorry, I was going to say, like, and I guess my question to you, because I remember playing Soul Reaver, and I know someone's going to call me out because I said the wrong name, but I remember playing Soul Reaver back on the PlayStation 1, and there was another one, Legacy, I believe it was Legacy of Kain on PS2 that came out a little bit after, because I believe you did play as Kain.
The whole series, it's 5 games. You're probably referring to Blood Omen 2.
That's the one. Sorry. So I remember playing the first one I played on PlayStation, and it was to me it was a really cool game. Difficult, but like the character design, he's definitely one of the coolest looking dudes for sure. My first question for you is like, how did this all come about? Like, what was it for you guys? Because you said there's already so many passionate people online. What was it for you guys that made you all come together and pick that specific project, I guess, to revamp?
I must confess that I joined on the cart when there was only one person working on it, and I was like, if we have to do this, let's do it properly. It was like a project ripping off models from PS2, and we started really humbly because it was only one person, and we decided to bloat the project. Let's do it right, let's do it bigger. Why we came together and why there is so much support about the series, I think the Legacy of Kain is one of the most peculiar franchises I ever played so far. There are mostly 2 reasons why. The first one is the narration.
It was Amy
Herring was the writer. And
was it just her? I know she's one of the key ones, but was it?
I reckon she was the lead back in the day. And Daniel Cabuco was the art director back in the day, and he worked on some really outstanding designs. The narration in that game, it's absolutely superb. It's nothing short of amuletic. It's very it's not verbose too much for the sake of it, but it's very convoluted yet elegant. And they never resort to speaking in low terms. You can tell, like, the franchise is about vampires. Actually, later on, time traveling vampires. So it gets a bit more complex. But you can tell the nobility of their words, the nobility of their heritage by the way everybody speaks in that game, and it's like it's presented in a really peculiar way. And the other reason is that the game stood out a lot in the panorama of the current era, because it comes from an age where platforming games were super colorful. Like it came the same age of the Jack and Dexter, Spyro.
It's Crash Bandicoot.
Crash Bandicoot as well. Like that's the PS1 platform gen. I'm speaking about Soul Reaver because it's the most iconic game. Even back in Blood Omen, and we're talking about a 2D top-down shoot action RPG. It was kind of pioneering back in the day because it featured open world action combat on a Dreamcast title. So it was pretty massive and even though it looks dated by any means, Blood Omen looks terribly dated. You can tell that it's not your run-on-the-mill generic medieval fantasy games. So it's like also one of the few precursors of gritty fantasy depictions.
Right.
So super gothic, super dark. So those are 2 important things that made the series really unique in their time.
I mean, it's definitely a cult. I guess it's the term cult classic for it, because it was. I'm not as big as a fan as yourself or some others online, but I definitely have fond memories of it. And like I said, the character, especially when he captures souls, when he opened up like his, like, I guess it was his cloak and mouth.
Skull.
Like that was one of the coolest things to me as a child playing that, because it was just, like there's some stuff to that really, builds on something. So, and that's really cool. And I guess, how have you found, because it's not like your own IP or anything like that, or your team's IP, how have you found, I guess, like sticking to the source material? Because I think that's one of the big thing when people are remaking a game like Shadow of Colossus. The most recent one has got a lot of praise because of how faithful it is. Well, it's just a HD remake of the original. And I'm guessing, like, how are you finding sticking to the lore? Is there things that you guys are thinking of changing, and if so, what would be the reasons? Or if you are trying to just do a faithful adaptations? Because obviously this is such a long-winded question, I'm sorry, because we as an industry have grown and learned other techniques and stuff since that time. So how are you guys finding this?
It's a long-winded question with a long-winded answer, because
Makes me feel better.
Several hundred questions in one line.
I mean, yes.
Okay, let's start. Let's start right off the bat. I must give you some backstory, super quick. The game itself was like Soul Reaver itself was an experiment, because there's a lot of experimental game design back in the day, and it was on a really bad time period for platformers, because it came out when the analog stick wasn't introduced yet, or it wasn't used commonplace. That means that the direction, like, it's a 3D, is in that time frame where platforms were three-dimensional, but with 8 direction movement, not per pixel movement. And I must say, it's really harsh. If you play it now and you never touch the series, completely unbiased, the gameplay is not gonna be super enjoyable, because it had some really bad flows. And that's an objective view. Even as a fan, I objectively can tell that some of the gameplay has aged badly. May it be because the game was released almost unfinished, because there's like the last third of the game was completely cut just before the release.
Oh damn!
And they actually cut the plot, and the plot steered to a completely different direction of the whole franchise because of this cut. Which is an interesting story. We can elaborate later. And the fact that the game was pushing the limits of the PS1 technology as well.
Yeah, for sure.
The game was an open world action platformer. You had no loading screens. You could possibly finish the game in one sit with no loading screens, being able to wander Nosgoth as you wish. And as you get more powers, because the design behind blocking of zones is, I do not have the capability to get to this point yet. Example, you cannot climb walls until you do a certain thing. When you unlock all the powers, the whole Nosgoth is available for you.
So very like Castlevania sort of style in terms of its design then, isn't it?
Yes, but in 3D that was pretty heavy. And also it featured a particular technology, because the world would shift. There were actually 2 game maps.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
And this is, I think it's to me it's a pinnacle of level design, honestly. By any means, my personal opinion. But the fact that you can pack 2 levels in one, and a game design element is shifting between these 2 worlds, but having limitation and as how much you can shift. And having different behaviors, because, for instance, water was fog in the Spectral Realm, so you couldn't swim. Anything that was out of reach, it was out of reach because you couldn't swim there. And even swimming, you unlock swimming really late in the game, because otherwise, in this universe, water is acid for vampires. So you would melt in water. And it's really complex, or like a lot of mechanics are interwoven together. For us to bring this stuff to the modern era, it's something perfectly feasible. And but we need there are some issues that we need to address. On one side, we have a world with an established lore, an established look and feel, and we can keep that. Our goal is to make it just better, graphically up to date. And I don't think there really is much more. We are planning on expanding a bit some zones, because we don't have the technical limitation on the PS1, so we don't need like S-shaped corridors while the level is streaming in the background, which was used a lot. And so we can get away with larger areas and, I don't know, more enemies and stuff like that. But on the side of the gameplay, there is some stuff that we need to tackle. The first thing being the combat, which is tremendous. You have to keep pressing a button to lock the target while using the directional pad to move, while using another button to fight. And on console is still manageable, but trust me, playing that with mouse and keyboard back in the day for me was a nightmare. I didn't have a PS1, so it was a nightmare. So we need to tackle on, like, be realistic. This is one advice I give to all the fan projects, because there is usually lose sight of what is feasible against what is nice, because the nostalgia plays a big part.
Yeah, I agree on that.
And we don't need to give in to nostalgia. Nostalgia means that you need to give the love it deserves, but not oversee the defects. Because giving the love that the game deserves and remaking it also means improving it where you can. So other people can enjoy it as much as you did back in the day. If I want to give Soul Revenant to a 15-year-old kid and he has to enjoy it as I do, the kid is used to a different standard of the industry, because we, as you said, we've grown so much.
Yeah.
So we need to give them a different. We can give them like the carbon copy experience, because they won't enjoy it. And to me, it's worse than just not remaking the game, because there's no point in that. Like, okay, it's just a pretty reskin. But this is where probably our love for the games come to, like, realize that we need to iterate over some stuff. And by any means, I'm not saying they did a bad job back in the day.
Technology has evolved, times have changed. You know what I mean? Like, not in a bad way. Just, I think any game that's getting remastered, I think at some point, the team has to have a look and say, okay, like, one of the big things people are now talking about, for example, with the Final Fantasy VII remake, is some of the stuff, are they going to... What's going to be kept in terms of, are they going to stick to traditional turn-based combat, or are they going to move to the combat in Final Fantasy 15? I think it's a really interesting one. It's a fine line, because also, like you said, I think it's a very passionate Italian way. I can see how you got yourself a girlfriend. I loved that phrase there that you said, mate. The love it deserves, but not be blinded by its flaws. And I think that is a very good way to look at it, and I think that's an important one when doing it. So yeah, I think that's nice.
And also, there's one last thing I must say. Our love goes also to the cast of people that made the game.
I'm sure it does. Yeah.
Especially to the late Tony J, which was like masterful in his role. He played the Elder God, the Deus Ex Machina of the whole series. But also Michael Bell and Simon Templeman, they did an outstanding voice acting job. To me, it's by far one of the best voice acting I've seen ever, period, even now. Because they took a really talented cast of actors, and it shows. It shows because it's passionate. You can tell the characters are living, like a blue goal with no jawbone, and which is anything but a living creature. It feels living because Michael Bell's interpretation is superb.
His voice is brilliant. It reminds me to that of in Cowboy Bebop to Spike, where when the voice just fits a character, and like I said, because of that, and obviously I'm sure he worked very hard to deliver those lines, and the people who worked with him to get those lines all worked very hard. And it's just like I said, when it comes together at a nice point, he's got one of the smoothest voices as well. Did he move on? Do you know if he did any other video game projects? Because I don't think I heard him, and I could have just missed it. Because
I think he's retired now. We've been working on so many things. In the US, I've been voicing Transformers character.
Oh, wow.
He's been voicing over gargoyles in the old Disney movie. I used to
love that show.
I've looked at his filmography, and he's done so many shows. Like there is a ridiculous amount of them. And one thing that's what makes me a bit sad about that is that his performance in Soul Reaver goes kinda a bit under the rug because it's outclassed by much more famous performances. So it's never really remembered as Raziel, which to me it's kind of a shame because I've seen some of the cartoons and I loved the Gargoyles show and whatnot, but that was different because it wasn't like the narration was slow paced and it was more mature and allowed him to actually put more emphasis, more pathos to the whole thing. So yeah, that's my only. It's a bit of a shame about that.
So I guess my follow-up question then to this, which will just be one instead of several loaded questions, is are you reaching out to get the voice actors or using the audio from the original then?
Well, at the moment we're using the original one. Please bear in mind that it's still a fun project, and we have
Why are you getting us more?
zero cash. Although,
so it's all doing it for the love. No one's getting paid. It's all for the love.
We're just doing it in our spare time at the moment. If we remain like this, because we wouldn't mind pushing the project forward and make it official. Like there's been cases of this happening, of studios contacting the owner of the IPs and getting green light. So,
Sonic Mania was a fan project that got greenlit. So yeah,
it's an entirely possible thing, and who knows if in the future that happen. At the current stage, we plan to release the game for free to whoever has a copy of the game. So we require the original game to be bought. And
how will you know? Because like I had the original, but it's long gone.
You probably when installing you need to select the original exe file, and we check the firmware, which is something that also other mods have done to prevent legal issues. There is also the problem is, of course, the cease and desist could always be behind the corner.
Yeah,
it's kind of a shaky because it can even be classified as fair usage because it's not technically we're not reusing any file ripped from the game aside from the voices.
Yeah,
but even the music is being recomposed. We are having a composer that is redoing everything. I would love to do some retakes, if we were to get the money. Again, sadly, the Elder God cannot be recast, and I'd rather not recast completely the Elder God because I would love to keep I'm adamant about keeping Tony J's voice, and but yeah, this is the problem we're facing currently. So voices, we'll keep the original files and remaster them.
I guess, have you either received any cease or desist, or anyone from the original team reached out to you lot? I mean, who owns the IP as well?
Okay, the IP currently is Square Enix.
Oh, do they own it? Interesting.
Yes,
okay.
they bought because the company that made the game was Silicon Knights, that in turn was bought by Crystal Dynamics, that in turn was bought by Square Enix. So Square Enix has everything now.
Wow.
And yes, this opens up the discussion of a lot of IPs being bought by big companies, and there are a lot of dead IPs that are there. Theoretically, could have become abandonware, but have been bought for a real low amount of money because you never know if they can resurrect the only shame is that, of course, you cannot fan project can never go legit over this kind of stuff because abandonware is no longer a thing. But at the moment is Square Enix. There are some people from that worked on the original game, or some people that worked on the franchise that are in contact with us, and we're hoping that they will be satisfied with our work.
That's nice.
I'm not doing any names because I'm not. It's kind of a shaky ground. No. So. But I really hope that our work will be up to standards for them to see their creature being brought back to life, not as an abomination, but as a good work.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. I think it's nice that some people have gotten in contact with you all, which is a cool thing. So how? I guess you don't have to give a time frame, but I guess I'm wondering how long has it taken you so far? Like, how long have you all been working on it? Because it's been out you've been working on it for a while, I guess.
Yes, I think a couple of years, but I'm not sure it's reliable because being a fan project means there are some even 6 months time frames where nobody touches the work. Not because we don't want to work on it anymore, but simply because life happens.
Yep.
And it's not our full-time job.
Yeah.
So we need to do that when like time allows. I'll give you an example. Moving here, I had to stop working for 3 months because it was taking its toll, even 4 months. And so yeah, it's I can't give an ETA for this reason mostly. I could say 3 years if we were to keep constantly working there.
No, I mean, like I said, I think it's a tough one when life does get in the way from any fan project. If it's just a new IP that you're making or trying to do that, I think life is one of those obstacles you can't always see coming, you know.
Yes, but one thing I want to say, I need to commend the people that are working with me, because our team is incredibly dedicated. I'm really happy about that. I've been in other fan projects. I even worked for a while on the Sky Oblivion team.
Okay.
And that's far more organized because there are a lot of people working that. We're talking about 50, 60.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of people. But the few we are working on Soul Revenant at the moment, we are almost most dedicated to the project. And even if we don't have time to work, we always go back to it at some point.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a longing for it to exist.
Yeah.
So I really need to commend them, because I don't want that to pass out as people just not being passionate enough.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the case. It is, like we said before, life just happens. So I think no one should never think or say that. You know, I'm wondering how. I guess you might not know now. Do you have a time frame of when you'd like to get this finished or anything like that? Because
I would like to do that in the next couple of years, really, because I wouldn't mind playing it myself. I mean, at the end of the day, we're also fans of the game, and I really feel guilty for all the people that are going nuts. Like every time we release a screenshot or even the tiniest scrap of detail, they go nuts, and it makes us feel like if we were working, like it's the same kind of hype of bigger projects. So it makes us feel really nice, and I think we are obligated to them to be as fast as possible if we within our means. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. So a couple of years would be my dream time.
Okay, no, that's cool, man. I mean, hopefully, touch wood, it happens. You know, because like I say, it's a fan project. So, but no, man, that's cool. And then, what is I should have asked this first time around. What is your role on the project? Do you art or tech art? What are you doing on the project?
At the moment, I'm sort of coordinator, and I do environment art, I do tech art, and I do also VFX. So There's a lot of stuff under my umbrella. We don't have definite roles like director, but I'm kind of a lead artist, something like that.
Yeah.
There are other people that are working on huge chunks of the game. So yeah, it's like we could say we are the lead artists.
Yeah. How are you finding, I guess, dividing the work between you all?
Well, some stuff is crystal clear. There are some people that are like ridiculously good at making characters, so just make them do characters. We sometimes just hire people. We ask on the page if someone is available to do a job. We specify that it's unpaid, of course. Then the tasks are usually handled the same way we would handle a legit project. The only constraint that we have is that we cannot set deadlines because we're not paying anyone. Yeah. We're not setting deadlines, and of course what we need on the spot, because we may need to release some screenshot or some scrap of material, so we may want to just push forward some content over some other. But it's pretty lax at this stage because it's it's also a bit of a contribution thing. I can't ask someone to do something he doesn't really want to do.
No, that sounds really cool, man. Like I think it's great to hear about this. I don't think we talk about enough like fan projects, and I think it's a really nice one that you all are doing because it is a cult classic. So where can people find out information about this game?
You can find us currently on our Facebook page. It's called Soul Revenant. We'll soon set up a website probably, but our main source of information is the Facebook page for the time being.
Brilliant. There will be a link below to that in the description if you guys want to check that out. So I'll put a link in there. And if anyone wants to reach you or see what you, the great Francesco, are working on, how can they get in contact with you, mate?
They can write on our page. We are available 24/7 on that page.
He means 24/7.
24/7. Did I say 20?
Yeah, he said 24/7. So like someone better answer every minute. That's what I'm going to say now.
Yeah, I mean, I get notification. I may ignore them, but I get notification every day. So
no, messing. That's brilliant. Well, okay, listeners, we're going to wrap it up. Again, a huge thank you to Francesco for coming on and answering questions, not only about his fan project and something that sounds really, really cool, but also about tech art and hopefully guiding some of you to your dream career as well. So thank you all very much. If you want to get in contact with me, but no one will because you stole the show, it's me on Twitter, which is @MaxPairs. You can email into the Level Design Lobby, which is leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And if you are listening to this through any podcast app, please do give it a 5-star review, because it helps build the brand and helps us grow and build a stronger community. If you are listening through the power of YouTube or SoundCloud, then please subscribe to stay up to date with the latest information. Well, thank you all very, very much. Lots of love from us to you. See you guys next time.
bye.